Just a brief word of Torah, or as I think that's what rabbis always say, a brief word of Torah. There's this movie on Netflix right now that is the #1 movie on Netflix, and I can't tell if that's because it's a good movie or it's because everybody is sort of hunkering down and canceling their New Year's celebration, and so what else is there to do but watch Netflix? Or maybe it's because it stars Meryl Streep, and let's be honest, anything that stars Meryl Streep I'll watch because she's Meryl Streep. But this movie, Don't Look Up, I don't know how many of you have seen this already. I see some yeses, I see some confused faces. So, spoiler alert, but it's pretty clear from the first 3 seconds of the movie. It's about scientists who see this giant comet in the sky slowly making its way towards Earth. And they predict based on the trajectory that within 6 months it will hit Earth and it will be this extinction level event. And you have politicians who refuse to accept the reality of what's going on. And even when it gets so close that you can actually see this blazing thing in the sky slowly descending, they start this chant in their political party, this chant within the arenas of their meetups, "Don't look up." Right, that as if you don't look up, if you don't see this comet crashing down, then it doesn't exist. I'll let you guess what happens at the end when they refuse to see or accept the comet heading right towards them. You know, I think about this because one of the characters, the head scientist played by Leonardo DiCaprio, who's a fine actor, he's no Meryl Streep, he wrestles with how much to share with the public when the elected officials who run the country don't want him to share too much. And he wrestles with wanting to be loved and accepted, at one point referred to by the morning shows as America's sexiest scientist, and is loved and embraced by America, by viewers, and is willing to settle for being embraced than speaking truth to power, no matter what people say or how people respond to him. And I was just thinking of this, not just in light of the world that we live in, how there are those who choose to ignore the reality that we're living in, can say that this is an allegory. Is it an allegory for climate change? And science deniers? Is it an allegory for this pandemic that we are now almost 2 years in, that people pretend it doesn't exist? Is it an allegory for the gun violence epidemic, that people say that guns don't kill people kill people, except guns kill people, and they refuse to talk about that and instead offer their thoughts and prayers? This could be an allegory for anything that those in positions of power, be it those who make money off of the backs of tragedy, as is the case in this movie, as is the case in the world that we're living in, those who rise to power because of tragedy, as is the case in this movie, as is the case in the world that we're currently living in, that they're more concerned with themselves rather than others. But I also found this movie particularly telling as we were preparing to chant Torah this morning. And as I mentioned, that while we read the first 7 of these 10 plagues in this parsha, we also have a repetition of something that is deeply concerning to Moses. So much so concerning that it's mentioned twice within a matter of verses. And while this is not the first time we're told it, it's, I think, remarkable that it's mentioned twice right here. So, God spoke to Moses and Aaron with regard to how they shall deliver the Israelites from slavery. But why speaking to Moshe and Aharon? Because immediately, the verse before in Exodus chapter 6, verse 12, Moshe is worried. He said, the Israelites didn't listen to me. How will Pharaoh listen to me? Va'ani arol svatayim. Right? We talked about this earlier. I have uncircumcised lips. And then the narrative breaks and pauses. And we have this whole list of this genealogy list of the Israelites and their tribes. And it brings us back to Moses again. And then we have, less than a chapter later, God speaking to Moses again and say that I will place Aaron as your prophet, because that same chapter, chapter 6, which in verse 12, Moses says, I am of uncircumcised lips, ends with Moses saying the same thing to God again. Chen ani arol svatayim ve'ech yishma alai paro. I have uncircumcised lips. How is Pharaoh ever going to listen to me? And for those of us who grew up going to Hebrew school, we learned the story that is not in Torah, but it's because our rabbis had to make up this story, this midrash of Moshe actually having a speech impediment. And why does he have a speech impediment? Because he put coal in his mouth when this midrash which tells us that Pharaoh was testing him, when Bat Paro, when Pharaoh's daughter wanted to adopt him to make sure he wasn't going to try to steal Pharaoh's riches. And of course, he wants to choose the gold and the rubies, the shiny things, and an angel of God moves his hand away from that to take the hot coal instead, and like babies do, right, Rami? Like babies do, they put things in their mouths, and he puts the hot coal in his mouth and burned his tongue, and that's why he has a speech impediment. Because the rabbis have to try to understand, why is it so important that Moses, this great leader, has uncircumcised lips, that it's referred to as such so many times. It's not the only thing that is referred to as uncircumcised with a foreskin of sorts. Within our Torah, we're told that people have uncircumcised hearts. People have uncircumcised ears. The idea, though, if we look at what does it mean to be uncircumcised, the act of circumcision we learn from Abraham, from Avraham Avinu, is the physical symbol of faith and commitment to God. The way that we commit ourselves, or at least those who have the organ to do so, commit ourselves to living a life in which we try to be God's partners. And then all of a sudden, we're told that Moshe, who did not grow up as an Israelite, who grew up in Pharaoh's palace, who a bit left Pharaoh's palace, was living in Midian as a shepherd, married to the priest's daughter, is now all of a sudden supposed to be God's spokesperson. And it's, does he want to speak up, or does he not believe what he's going to say? Does arol svatayim mean that he has stage fright, that he has a speech impediment, or does it mean that he lacks faith? Or, in this case, he says that he has uncircumcised lips because the Israelites didn't listen to him. So how will Pharaoh? Almost like the prophet Jonah, he's not interested in telling truth to power. He's interested in being accepted as somebody who the Israelites automatically saw as an outsider, not a man of the people, because he did not grow up among them. He grew up in Pharaoh's palace. How is he supposed to be God's voice if people won't listen to him? All he wants to do is be accepted. It'd be very easy to make decisions in this world solely based on what is popular. All right? It'd be very easy for us to make decisions about our policies at shul based on what is most popular, but that's not the way we make decisions. And I'll tell you, if decisions and laws were passed based on popularity, some of the civil rights legislation would have happened. We don't do things because they are popular. We do things because they are right. We do things because we believe that they are the right decisions at the time. And Moses was urged and charged by God to speak truth to power. But he, who only knew of a life of luxury before leaving for Midian, only knew of what it meant to be cared for and loved and feared by a people, was concerned about that. You know, we talk about Moses' humility, we talk about his leadership, we talk about how was he humble because he said, God, there must be somebody better. But it's that he was fearful. He was fearful of being accepted. He was fearful of having his words taken out of context. He was fearful of having his feelings hurt because he took a stand. Those of us who spend way too much time on social media, we know that we've learned where some people stand on certain issues. And as a result, there are certain people that we either don't talk to about certain things because we're never going to convince them of our belief system and they're never going to convince us. Or, in more extreme circumstances, we don't talk to at all anymore because we're in different worlds, can't see eye to eye about anything, so what's the point? I bring that up because I think there's anything that this movie, Don't Look Up, taught us, there's anything ultimately that the roles of Moshe and Aaron teach us, is that we could die, literally, staying true to our beliefs, but it doesn't matter if all our beliefs do is lead to the end of us in this world. Or we could speak up and stand up for what we believe is right, even at times when it's not the most popular opinion, and speak truth to power, regardless of how people view us. We're doing what we believe Moshe was tasked to do, Aaron was tasked to do, to be God's partners, to have uncircumcised lips, to really be a prophet, as Aaron is referred to, a prophet that we all need in this world, in this new year. Amen.